If you're a B2B business owner, then chances are LinkedIn is a gold mine for your business. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of welcoming on Charlie Hills, who is, by best accord, a LinkedIn and AI expert. We sat down and really delved into AI. We spoke about how he's utilizing it in his LinkedIn and content stack. I will easily say Charlie is one of my favorite creators on LinkedIn. He has some of the best, probably the best infographics that I've seen. There's a few people out there as well, to be fair. But you know what? His stuff is top notch. We delve into how he creates his content, what he does, and how he literally does it hands off. If you're looking to use AI, listen to this podcast. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, share it to a friend. Thanks. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Charlie, welcome to the pod.
Hi Joe, thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Charlie, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. For me personally, growth means two things. One is from a personal development side of things, becoming stronger as a person, more confident as a person. But then secondly, from a business and personal brand perspective, growing my audience, my distribution, but then also my pipeline, my revenue. So yeah, those are the two ways that I personally look at growth.
How do they go hand in hand with one another?
Well, for me personally, personal branding has ultimately caused me to grow as a person, like anyone would. But the difference between being employed full time and being comfortable in your role, you will grow over time, but it will take longer. Whereas with personal branding, with launching your own business, the growth is insane because one, you have to figure everything out and wear many hats across your business. And ultimately that's just expedited the entire process for my own personal development. If I look where I was 2 years ago when I first set out on my journey, I'm like, wow, I really didn't know anything. Whereas now I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but I feel like I'm way more accomplished, way more equipped for the world of business.
So just for the context for listeners, can you just give people a bit of a background into what you were doing previously, kind of your personal brand, what you focus on, how you help people?
Sure. So I'm a marketer by trade. I studied marketing at university. And whilst I was there, I actually wrote my dissertation on the impact of AI on customer loyalty. And lo and behold, the following year, ChatGPT launched. It was like the best timing to study AI. So I found myself working full time, as most people do, after graduating. And I literally used to go into like work every single day and share a new AI tool, a new update, a new thing with my boss. And ultimately, working for a small or medium-sized business, you don't really have the time to implement AI, or people back then in 2023 and 2024, they didn't have the time to really think about it. It was all new, nascent tech, and they didn't want to think about implementing it. So I literally knew I had to find a creative outlet for my AI passion, and that was LinkedIn. I just started posting to LinkedIn out of pure passion, alongside my day job. So I did that for like 9 months straight. Quit my 9 to 5 because I signed a few clients. I started growing my audience to around 30K. And that was in September 2024. So since then, I've literally just, 10x my followers, launched multiple six-figure businesses. And that's all because it started out as a passion just by posting about AI, using AI, and sharing it with the world, and building in public ultimately. So yeah, that's what I do. I help people actually use AI because that actually is very important because AI takes a lot of time. We over-engineer, we think it's going to solve all our problems. But most of the time, if you don't know what you're doing, then it can actually delay development. It can actually cause more problems than it does help.
So typically, who would you normally work with? Do you just work with, is it solo entrepreneurs, people who want to buy back their time in a job? Is it scale up businesses? What type of businesses do you typically, or people do you work with?
So I work with a range of different businesses. On the like influencing side of things, I work with some of the biggest brands in the world, like Anthropic, Zapier, Notion. And that's obviously on like, I'm going to post about the company. But then helping individuals with my range of different services, that's typically more, I'd say, SMEs, smaller size businesses, people who are solopreneurs, people who are just getting started posting to LinkedIn. That's typically the intersection of where I start helping, is that they want to use AI, but they also want to grow on LinkedIn. So effectively, I'm essentially giving them the tools and the experience to use AI to grow authentically without sounding like everyone else on LinkedIn. So it really does vary. I'd say I don't have a specific target market or audience. It's totally anybody. But typically, that's who I usually end up working with.
What would you say is the biggest challenge you see people face when it comes down to actually leveraging AI efficiently and not over engineering it, as you said?
So the biggest challenge I see is one, the lack of knowledge, the lack of reps using it, because AI changes every single week. Even as someone who does it for their full-time job, to keep up with these updates, it's tiring. It's hard because it changes in a flash. So that's one thing, not knowing which tool or feature to use, but then how to effectively integrate it into their business and systems. So for me personally, I find the most effective way that works for me and my own content is that I'm going to test it, I'm going to break it, I'm going to find out exactly how it works. And once I find that, then I'm going to share it with my audience and basically save them a ton of time, not making the same mistakes that I had to when I first implemented it myself. So yeah, it's 100% just lack of knowledge, lack of know-how, because it's just so new and nascent that they don't know what to do with it.
So let's say I'm an absolute AI novice newbie who started using Claude, ChatGPT, can't even spell Claude. What would you say to me? I'm running a small business. What would you kind of be, maybe it's like a small role play, but what type of questions would you be asking me in order for me to understand how to use Claude more effectively?
Okay, well, yeah, question one is, do you have a Claude account? If you do, then great. Done. And then question two is ultimately, what are those repeatable processes that you're doing every single day, every single week? Because once you can itemize them and write them down, then it's incredibly simple to build them out in Claude, because it surprises me how many people haven't actually built a Claude skill yet, despite how easy they are to create. All it takes is describing your problem, describing your workflow in natural language, and then you can effectively build out a Claude skill that will do that specific thing for you. So that could be as simple as writing a LinkedIn post, or it could be as advanced as updating multiple systems like your CRM when you get an inbound lead, or something like that. Because once you have that, then it's very easy to move on to level two. And level two would be using a tool like Claude Cowork, which is on the desktop app of Claude, and then effectively running a scheduled task of that skill at a specific interval or time. Because then you can effectively run that process without you having to be in the loop, which is incredibly effective and time saving for business owners. And then after that, if you really want to get advanced, then it'd be level three. And that's actually using Claude Code to run this as a Claude routine. So that can run overnight, that can run on a schedule. You can build out agent teams, but that's getting a bit too advanced. The number one thing that I'd recommend people to start with is a Claude skill. It's probably one of the most underrated, but one of the most powerful Claude features that has come out in the past year or so.
I love that. And that's how you and I connected. We were at the Undeniable event a month or so ago, probably a bit longer than that now. And we were there, we spoke at the end, and you did a presentation on it. And I think based off of our sub-series right now, The Intelligent Edge, it'd be a fantastic platform just to teach people there. And I think, as you so well pointed out, I think where the murkiness with regards to AI comes into is people just don't know where to start. And it's often the same if you're going to the gym, you're going for a run, you haven't done something before. It's the first step is the hardest because it's the most, or it feels the most daunting because it's the most unfamiliar, the gap. And I think Alex Hormozy says it, if you spend 20 hours learning something, you straight away go into the top 5% of most knowledgeable people out there who understand a tool. And a lot of it just comes down to exposure and repetition. For you, what do you think built this passion, possibly slight obsession, with regards to AI? What was there anything that spurred you on? Is there something you can root back to your childhood that says, "Oh, I remember when I started enjoying this," and then actually that relates to how I am today?
Yeah, gosh. Well, for me, I can't pinpoint anything earlier than I remember in 2018, there was a quote from Elon Musk at the time who was saying by 2025, AI will surpass human intelligence. And I saw that, I was like, oh, damn, like AI really is the up and coming thing. And that prediction was 100% accurate because 2025, AI did surpass human intelligence. It clearly did. It beat all of the benchmarks, all of the IQ tests versus like how smart it is versus humans. So that's exactly why when I was writing my dissertation at university, I was like, okay, AI is going to be the hot new thing of this decade. I'm going to study it. I'm going to understand it. Because then when it came out, I was like, I'm using this every single day. Like some people did. Others, ignored it, thought it was a fad, thought, that's going to go away next year, like Bitcoin, or I guess Bitcoin is relevant, but NFTs, that's the one I was looking for. But for me personally, I believe because I'm a marketer and marketing's hard. There's so many different aspects of marketing that you have to think about. Copywriting, design, CRO, there's just so much that goes into it. So for me, the fact that I could effectively cover the entire marketing stack from one tool just instantly made it an instant sell for me and something that I gravitated towards, because I wouldn't even have started posting content online if it wasn't for AI. I've never been the best copywriter. I literally suck at copywriting. But with AI plus my own intuition and thoughts, it really helps me just to get words on the paper and to actually share my journey online and to help other people do so too.
That's it. And just with everything you've unpacked there, and I think go back to 2018, that Elon Musk quote, and it's an emphatic statement that has come true. So, testament to the foresight that he had there. Where do you see AI going in the next 12 to 24 months?
Goodness, it's a hard
And I'm
prediction.
sure the answer you're going to give, no disrespect to you, is going to be inaccurate because the rate in which things are changing, I don't think any of us can anticipate what's happening.
Well, if we look at the past 2 years, so we're in 2026 now, and if we look back at 2024, we were prompting, we had no memory, we had literally no connectors in AI models. So that was like very isolated and we couldn't do much at all with AI. It was so limited. I literally look back at AI a year or two ago and cringe. I'm like, whoa, what were we doing? So in 2028, what that might look like is truly what I believe will happen and is already happening is the agentic web, whereby literally AI is just going to take over the internet and most of our jobs, to be honest. I'm already seeing that in my day-to-day content operations. I literally have an AI agent, an agent team in Claude Code that does every aspect of my content. That's my newsletter, my YouTube, my Instagram, my LinkedIn. And effectively what it's doing is not replacing me, but is very much amplifying the quality of the output that I create. Because sometimes I do spend equally as much time as I would creating something with AI because I have the spare time to put more thought, more input into it. So ultimately what I think we'll see now is the fact that AI can act on our behalf autonomously across the internet in a very sophisticated way. Currently, it is still a bit rigid and hard for it to do specific things like grab screenshots to effectively communicate with humans on the internet. But what we'll see is these incredibly sophisticated agents, such as OpenClaw, such as Hermes agent, that we're seeing currently in 2024, but 10x, I think.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. they've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, I'm completely with you there. And I think the rate, the expansion of knowledge and growth over the past, I even look at the start of this year compared to the back end of last year. I think we've had our biggest level up in quality. And I'll give you an example. I've built how many websites? 3 websites recently. I cannot build websites. That was not what I could have done a year ago, probably because I had no interest in it. I was able to sit down with ChatGPT, with Claude, with an AI website builder, and build stunning websites. Websites that I've sent to people and they've been like, sorry, where did you get this done? How much did you pay for it? And I said, well, I paid for myself. So there we go. But it just goes to show. And I think if AI can become more expansive and just be there for the everyday person and simplify it, because I think the biggest barrier to AI right now is that first level of adoption of people jumping the hurdle and saying, actually, I will start using AI. I was speaking to my mum. She is a psychotherapist. And I said to her, hey, are you using ChatGPT at all in what you're doing? I won't even start with Claude there. But for her, she said, oh yeah, kind of, I'll recite a book that I'm not too sure of. And I asked her, so she's a psychotherapist and a hypnotherapist. And I said, for your hypnotherapy work, because she said, oh, I'll need to go back into my notes and find my strategy for helping people with this problem. And I said, why don't you just go to ChatGPT and just say, how do you do this? And she's like, yeah, actually, come to think of it. And it's cool because these are SMEs, these are everyday businesses, people who are working hard, and it's just them taking that step back to go in. And I think, as you said, the AI web, we're going to, I mean, there's already Whisperflow, dictation apps, you can talk to Claude, the routines are there. I think the next layer for me personally over the next 2 years is just having something in a handheld device which you can literally talk to, and it does everything you need straight away, but just in a very clear format for people. And that's where the adoption is going to really take off. It's just a case for me is, can Anthropic, OpenAI actually become profitable with everything they're doing there? What are your thoughts?
On the profitability of these large AI companies? But yeah, that is one of my biggest concerns when it comes to the future of AI. Is right now they are following a loss leader approach. They are just trying to get as many paid users as possible and spending a lot of money on compute. So that's great for us. We're paying like $20 a month for access to the top tier frontier models. But if you put that into perspective, why would we only pay $20 a month for something this advanced when tools like HubSpot, tools like, the standard tools that we've been using over the past 10 or so years cost hundreds of dollars, and they're nowhere nearly as advanced as these LLMs. So the concern that I have ultimately is the fact that, yes, they're valued at like $1 trillion now, but to really reach profitability, what is the long-term game plan? Is it ultimately to get as many paid users now and get them reliant on the product? So then in a year or so's time, they'll be like, oh, by the way, we're just 10xing the costs for you guys. And then that will literally leave us so dependent on these tools. If you literally took away Claude from me now, I don't know where I'd start. I'd be like, damn, I literally can't do a fraction of what I'm doing right now. So that's probably, one of my biggest concerns is that one day, I'm not sure when, they will just ramp up the prices as we grow more dependent on these AI tools as a society, and ultimately lose our ability to think critically as well, especially young people who are just getting on these tools and didn't know what life was like before. So that's kind of the dark dystopian future that I think could come to fruition, but yeah, touch wood, it doesn't.
There's an interesting podcast I shot recently. I think it came out this week as we're recording, so probably in about a month or so's time from when people listen. A gentleman called Tony Hughes. He's based in Australia, and he's been pinned, I don't know who's quoted this, as the godfather of AI, very much someone who's been in the AI space, written 3 or 4 books, on AI. Very interesting. I think I'll double check what episode it is, but the ethical considerations of AI are very, very prominent, and getting that deeper understanding into how they're operating, if we're going to get to a place where they take over, so to speak. And I think even Elon Musk again, he said the existential threat of AI, he predicts there's a 20% likelihood that AI can end humanity, which is a very dark and harrowing uh, overview into everything, and doesn't paint a great picture considering that you compare that to the likelihood of war ending mankind and civilization. A bit of a tangent, but again, just on the same school of thought about how are these businesses sustaining? Yes, they have $1 trillion valuations, but they're using these as loss leaders, and I do anticipate similar to, and if you look at the model from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, if you look at them in silos, how do they start? It is pennies on the dollar to advertise, and then as time goes on, it's your CPCs, your CPMs, cost per 1,000 impressions, they skyrocket. I really see one of the next big levers for these LLMs. They're going to put advertisers on there. If you don't want them on there, you pay X amount. It's free footfall, it's free just traffic for these companies, and we're using Google Maps. Why not? And now people have taken the transition away from restaurants in Rio de Janeiro or whatever. Instead of going to Google, you go to ChatGPT, you go to Claude, and companies eventually will start paying for that premium real estate because it does impact bottom line. So I see those avenues happening in conjunction, or probably before they look at price hiking. But yeah, I don't see a world where $20 is sustained.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why ChatGPT had a lot of pushback towards ads in ChatGPT and was part of the exodus towards Claude, because that was the perfect time when everyone started to migrate. But ultimately, one of the biggest concerns here is just that consolidation of power, and how that could control and dictate what we believe to be true. So, for sure. I mean, I am optimistic. I'm always an AI optimist. So hopefully we'll just all be with our feet up in the Bahamas and the agents are doing all the hard work instead. That's the future that I'm envisioning when it comes to AI.
And just continuing that theme, but shifting it into a more positive light, just looking at the work you've done over the last 2 years, do you have any just glowing use cases as to a business you've helped, you've implemented a system, and it's transformed their operational structure, it's helped them increase their multiplier? Is there anything that you've done that's just really sprung to mind that you're really proud of?
For me personally, it's because I really help people one to many, through my content, through cohorts and coaching to help people grow on social media. And I believe that's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible when it comes to AI for content. For example, if you look at my LinkedIn, all of my graphics on LinkedIn, they're created with Claude Code. And I don't know anybody in the world who is doing it to this level, who has been this obsessed with creating infographics with
They are
AI.
very impressive, I must say.
Thank you.
Our top
Honestly,
tier.
I obsess over it because I don't know why I'm so obsessed with AI infographics, but it's ultimately my thing. And now I've evolved them into like these GIFs, which are honestly better than a human designer. And that's one thing that I'm really pushing for and helping people to do, because ultimately anybody can write a post and everybody can write, but not everybody can design. So that's the big thing that I'm trying to help people with, and ultimately is my mission, is that how can people communicate visually and grow their audience to effectively scale their business? Because it's incredibly hard. It's the same as starting with AI. How do you grow on LinkedIn? How do you grow on social media? It's honestly a puzzle, a maze that it's so hard to navigate. But ultimately, all it comes down to is good content. And by giving people my systems, my processes, I believe that I can honestly help a million plus people just by sharing the latest and greatest that happens in AI. So yeah, we've seen some real success stories from this. I even remember this one client in our cohort at the start of this year. She was a kidswear designer, and when she joined the cohort, I was skeptical because kids wear is very niche, especially when posting about it on LinkedIn. I don't know the total addressable market there, but effectively we gave her my AI prompts and the workflows to create graphics on LinkedIn, and then literally within 3 weeks she had already signed 3 clients and grown her audience and impressions like 10x what it was before. And that was one of the biggest surprises for me personally when it came to running the cohort. I was like, wow, this person who had literally probably thought would generate the least leads has actually just really been a top achiever out of everybody just from AI content. So
what do you think it was about her and the way she implemented and adopted the process that was different to others?
So the big thing that I believe this person did well was the fact that she really leveraged how-I content, not just how-to content. Because I see it on social media, I see it on LinkedIn, I see it all the time. People are literally going to AI, taking a graphic from elsewhere and just putting their name on it, because you can clone the output, but you can't clone the chef. And this is what this person did incredibly well. She effectively always posted and wrote from a place of experience instead of just simply sharing a framework or something basic. It was always about how she did it personally. And I believe that specificity really helped her, because this was all through content. This isn't implementing any social selling or outreach in the DMs. And that ultimately, despite not having a big audience, is probably the fastest way to effectively generate leads when it comes to content alone.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplify. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. So Charlie, how does my process, which is probably overly simplified, compare to your process?
So the first thing that I'm doing differently is that I'm not using GPTs. I think GPTs worked for a long time because they were the best solution that we had. But now with Claude, and also just experience when it comes to writing social media content, I've completely changed the way that I approach writing a LinkedIn post. But I do have a framework for people who can take that away and then write good LinkedIn posts. The first stage of the framework is C. It stands for curate context. So this essentially, I approach writing a LinkedIn post the same way a chef would to cooking up a dish. The C is creating context. It's gathering those ingredients, going to the pantry, getting the context. And what does this mean? The context could be, your story bank. It could be literally written on a Google Doc. It could be specific things that you've done, milestones, meeting transcripts, etc. Because then once you have all of this context collected into your AI, and that could be very simply with ChatGPT in a GPT, but if you want a more advanced system, then ultimately you want to be using something like Claude Cowork, which is probably the easiest to use and most advanced option, because then you can build out ultimately a folder in a Cowork project which has all of this context on you. So for example, you could have one folder which is meeting transcripts that you've extracted using Granola or Fireflies or whatever meeting transcripts note taker you're using. Then your background, your history, your achievements, etc. But then also your past posts. So it has examples of what's worked before. Because then when it comes to heating with AI, ultimately you can almost one-shot a perfect post. For me personally though, the big step that a lot of people miss when writing LinkedIn posts is that, and just social media in general, is that they will literally, like you're doing, Joe, to an extent, is that you're kind of brain dumping and hoping that idea will land. But the people who I know who are literally in the top 1% and are going viral almost every single day is that they're pre-validating their content. So what I mean by pre-validated content is that it's content that has already performed well on social media. So that could be on Instagram, that could be on X, that could be on LinkedIn. Because clearly there was something that the audience liked and engineered it to perform well. So once you have that, then you can effectively take a pre-validated idea, put that into your AI context system, and effectively change the value entirely. So it's completely your own original post, but it's backed by data rather than just guessing and hoping what will work. So effectively, then I'm going to create a post on my own thoughts about this specific topic or this specific framework that someone has shared before. And then essentially when it gets to the rest of the chef framework, which is enhancing with flavor, then you can add in small tidbits and things that have happened in your day, whether this is the podcast we're talking on right now. You could add additional insights that AI might have missed and not extracted from the context that you built in the first stage. Because now, one, it's highly contextualized, and two, it's actually backed by an idea that has performed well. So then the final stage of the chef framework, which is feed the community, is the most important when it comes to creating LinkedIn content. And it's part of the reason why my content does so well. It's because I literally spend like an hour or two every single day on LinkedIn, engaging with people, replying to DMs and building relationships. Because this is the one thing that AI can't replace. On LinkedIn anyway, you can't automate your comments. You can't automate your DMs. Well, you can, but you might get your account banned. So I wouldn't recommend that. And this is essentially the secret growth hack for growing on LinkedIn. It's good content that is backed by data, but then also comments and building real relationships and that sense of community with other people. And that's honestly the reason why I think that my content does so well. It's because I've spent years doing that. One, getting better at writing posts and creating posts, but secondly, actually building relationships with other people. And that's essentially a framework that anybody can apply. For me personally, I'm using Claude Code to create my infographics, and then using Claude to write my caption. It's quite simple. All I have to do is find something pre-validated, or maybe it's an original idea that I want to push. And because I have so many different frameworks, structures, cheat sheet layouts, etc., I'm just like, I feel like a scientist in a lab being like, oh yeah, like a pinch of that, then a pinch of this, and then voila, we have the perfect post, which I know is going to do well. So yeah, that's my framework for creating good LinkedIn content. Yeah.
See, I think the last layer to what you've spoken about, that commenting and engaging, that is a big part of the algorithm. They want to reward the people who aren't just going on there posting. I guess LinkedIn, same way as Meta or any other platform, they are rewarding the people who spend the most time on the platform as well. And it's so interesting. And to your point, I was traveling Ireland last week, so I'm not being funny. I don't want to spend my time on LinkedIn. I'd rather actually go outside and do stuff like a human and not be a robot. But I literally just scheduled my posts. My engagement goes down, and quite honestly, I don't really give enough of a shit to be like, oh my god, it's not working. It's just the risk versus reward, or the cost does not outweigh the additional benefits. But still, that is such an underappreciated layer. And even us as an agency, when we're working with clients and partners, that's a big element of what we're doing for them. It's the awareness, because you don't just want to come up as a salesman and you're just posting. People want that relationship layer there. But moving away from that, actually looking at your process, because your process is a lot more scientific, as you would say, compared to mine. And it's always great getting insights as to how people who are successful at LinkedIn and content creation are doing it. For you, and I imagine, and please plug your own services, like this is what this podcast is slightly there for as well, if we have guests that are there and are doing something which is cool. With this process, how would, let's say I'm a time poor business owner, how would I implement your process? What from like, Charlie, that's great, but you're a full-time content creator. I run a business and I'm tired and I've got all of these other things to do. How much time, if I was to implement your process into my business, would I need to dedicate to that?
So the time sink would effectively be in setting up the system. So that's building out your context database. That's building out scheduled tasks to effectively analyze profiles to find that pre-validated content. But once you've built out that initial system, then honestly, you can outsource and delegate the entire thing. You could have, one person be responsible for content, and then you could have another person who's responsible for managing your community. So I believe the hard bit is ultimately extracting the insights, extracting stuff from your brain and loading that up into AI. So that would honestly take like a day or two, maybe.
What's the best way you found to do that?
So effectively, the best way would be to connect your tools. So that could be Granola, as I mentioned before. Using a tool like Whisperflow to voice to text. You could even run a deep research report on yourself using Claude, ChatGPT, or Gemini. And effectively, you want to find a way to ultimately continue to compound and upload new knowledge and information to your context system. So whether that's you just setting up a simple automation from you voice to texting in Slack, then that's sending it across to your Claude Cowork local files, because then the person managing your account will have all of that context. So there's no like clear cut do this then that answer, but it's very simple now with using something like Claude Cowork scheduled tasks that you can set up these systems that effectively enrich your data over time. Because you can just extract basically everything and anything from every aspect of your work and your online presence to effectively build this system. And then ultimately, if you just have one good person who's responsible for the content and they actually spend a lot of time doing it, then trust me, it will work. It's just the very important piece is pre-validating the content then, but also building that community and having someone responsible for building relationships, commenting, and actually sounding like a real human, not just a AI robot on LinkedIn. So if you are going to do that, then do that from day one, because the awkward thing is when people start out doing it and they probably spend like hours on LinkedIn just out of pure excitement, commenting, etc. But if you are really that time poor and you're a business owner, then find some help, find someone to do it for you. It just all comes down to the initial system that you set up at the start. But an easy way, there are two options. There's a tool called Stanley, which I partner with. They're the best when it comes to just having a tool that will literally write great posts, design great graphics for you. And then there's option two, which is the Charlie Second Brain, which is coming out very soon. Effectively, it's going to take all of my frameworks, workflows, etc., and plug that into Claude so that it will coach you and create for you using all the best practices that I know.
Cool. So much to steal there. So nice plug on the Charlie Second Brain. When it's there, send me a link. We'll put in the show notes. Stanley, very familiar with the tool as well. Sorry, I was just so engaged in what you said in the breakdown of the process. To that, I'm a big fan of what you said, because what I try to do is I will find snippets in my day that pop up, or anecdotal stories of this is pieced together with this. And the larger scale process of that is turning around using Granola, Fireflies. We get these podcast transcripts. We are making a white paper out of it. It'd be impossible for me to do that. We've done over 200 interviews. We've done 60 plus podcasts directly on artificial intelligence with experts, with leaders who are implementing AI within their business. So there's just so much breadth that a human wouldn't be able to process it. And even when we built our website for this podcast, we turned around and we used all of the transcripts so we could find the 0.1% quotes from guests on the show, and we were able to make a search library all with AI, which just absolutely blows my mind. And to think about that as an idea 12 months ago, I would have thought was impossible, but it isn't. And I think that breakdown of that process of having it formalized, and as you said, I think the biggest thing, at least for me, because where my mind would have went to is, okay, well, and I was taught how to grow my social media agency 8 years ago. Okay, you got to go into Facebook, you have to go into a community and comment on people's posts, add as much value as possible, and then they'll reach out to you. And I've tried probably every technique to generate a lead, a meeting, a sell you can think of. And this is essentially that on steroids, because you're scanning, I don't know, Reddit, X, all of the platforms, bringing that information, that data layer in, so you get that data report and it says, okay, maybe we can write our own spin, our own concept on this, and then put it out. And I mean, we've tested so many different ideas. Not to name drop anyone, there's one guy, I find it quite funny and a little bit annoying. And I just thought, it's actually good for our engagement. Pretty much every post or every other post, there's one guy in particular, he writes a comment on my post.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% know it's AI generated. And it's the worst. And they're always like good points, and they always finish off with a question like, curious, when AI fails, how do you ensure that humans get involved? I'm like, bro, come on. And I thought about messaging him. I was like, it's actually good engagement for me, because then I write a really good post and everything I respond with is me, not my assistant, not my team member. It's me replying to these people. But I just thought, and you could have done such a good job if you humanized that response with me. You would have built such a good layer of rapport, but you've broken my trust now because I've sniffed that this is AI.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the one thing that ultimately you shouldn't completely outsource to AI is the LinkedIn comments. Those are just, one, it's a bad rap with LinkedIn and AI comments, but secondly, it can just ruin your brand trust and reputability in seconds. One bad AI comment, because now you always associate that specific person with that quality of comment. I think for captions, for graphics, it's totally okay to use AI, but that's the distinction that many people miss. They've probably gone to an LLM, asked for an output, copy and pasted it, done. I would never do that with a caption or a graphic. I would never just rely on the first shot it gives me. There's always refinement. I'm not anti using AI for comments. I think it can suggest stuff, but it's down to you to discern and to make sure it's the best quality ideas that you actually, one, agree with, and secondly, you feel comfortable with publishing that with your name attached to it. So yeah, LinkedIn has a especially bad problem when it comes to the AI comments, for sure.
Big time. Moving the conversation away from artificial intelligence, because I feel we could speak for another hour on that. This show is called the Grapple and Growth Podcast. Now, I asked you at the start, what does growth look like to you? And to flip it to the the first word, long day, need my coffee, but grappling. If you could you just share something in your business journey that you've grappled with where you thought, actually, this isn't working as the way I planned? The big premise of why I started this podcast was not to just talk about how great things are going and how glamorous business is. It is really the raw, authentic snapshot, just maybe a bit more of that vulnerable side from people where they actually say, actually, this was a challenge that I had. And this is where I maybe thought business wasn't going to go that way, and we turned it around. Is there anything you could share there that could maybe inspire someone that's listening?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, this whole personal branding thing and growing my audience, it looks glamorous on paper, but it really isn't. It really, really isn't. I went from a 9 to 5 to a 9 to 24/7. It's honestly, like most business owners understand, it's non-stop, and it's very vulnerable and exposing, putting yourself out there online. Ultimately, what just started out as a passion project then became public speaking opportunities. It became literal like hate and people trying to like tear me down.
What sort of things have people said?
Well, I mean, obviously being within the AI space, there's always disbelievers. There's always people being like, wait, but you shouldn't be using AI for this, and people are going to have an opinion on it. And people obviously, just questioning and pushing back on what I share online, when ultimately we're all just doing our best. Like, I'm just sharing the workflows, the tools, the systems that work for me. For another person, they might be years ahead of me, or they might just have no idea or just not agree with AI whatsoever. And that is the thing that we expose ourselves to when it comes to like growing an audience with social media. Besides that, it's ultimately the public speaking journey. Like, I grew up with a stutter. I literally I couldn't speak my first word until I was like 3 or something. So to be this kind of exposed, even talking with you right now, it's definitely a huge growth journey for me personally. Like, even when I did my first speaking gig, I was crapping my pants. I was so terrified, man. But to push myself out of my zone of comfort and to get on those stages and to just grow as a person, it's so rewarding, yet so tough at the same time. But I wouldn't change it for anything, despite the weekends of work, despite the the hate, the people trying to tear me down, etc. It's just an interesting life to live, and I wouldn't change it.
Testament to you, man. And do you know what I always think at times? It's most of these bullshit comments you get from people, they never say it to your face. Like 99% of them will not say it to your face. These are just losers who don't do much with their lives. It's typically the people who are doing well, or they're relatively successful, more successful than us, who don't get caught up in that mode. And I remember a couple of years ago, and I can rage bait people, I really don't care. I'll just go for it. But I'll get people who, I was running ads and I was getting loads of comments on them, and just people absolutely rinsing me. And I was just like, you click and you realise after like the first 10 times, you're like, this person is an actual loser. And then I just moved on. And it's interesting the way how people hide behind cameras. And I think the point you made that really stood out to me was, we're all just trying to do our best. And for me, your process is far more sophisticated than mine when it comes down to LinkedIn content. But you know what? Your process works, my process works. And that's the thing about what we're doing. We can get a piece of lamb and we can cook 100 different dishes, because there's 192 odd countries in the world, and there's nothing that's perfect and there's nothing that's right. We all have our own spices, and you're talking about your chef analogies. That is it. There's no right or wrong, but my taste is different to yours and your likes are different to mine, and we just work. Then it's great to have conversations like these to understand what thought process is, because that's really what it is. It's, you said, the Charlie 2.0 brain that's coming out. People are buying into that because they're buying into your way of doing things, and we all have different goals. For me, if anything, I find, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, I find, and I used to hate posting on LinkedIn, but I quite find it therapeutic for me now. I have thoughts, and I've made it so frictionless. That's probably the best way I could describe my process now, where I have my phone, I literally use Whisperflow, I go to my notes, and then literally it just says LinkedIn post, and it doesn't stop. It just goes for days. And that is it's such a stupidly simple way of how I've built my process, but I've been able to engineer it so I can do it over and over again, and I don't feel burnt out with it. How does LinkedIn feel for you when you're posting? Do you find it to be a thing that you do because it's therapy, it's enjoyment, or you purely see it as a business task?
No, I mean, it's 100% something that I obsess over and love. That's why I'm doing it in the first place, because if you don't love it, then you definitely shouldn't be doing it as a full-time thing, let's say. So for me, I just obsess over engineering the right amount of, like the visuals, the hook, every element that goes into LinkedIn. It is honestly like a game for me, that I just love to play. And that's ultimately why I kept going when I was working 9 to 5 and doing it alongside my day job for 9 months, because that was so tough. I literally was doing like 14-hour days, waking up at 5 a.m. and then taking calls after work, commenting on lunch breaks. It was honestly excruciating, but because I loved it so much, I just kept going. And even now to this day, because it's a business task and it's a big part of my business, I still love it. I think it's all the additional stuff when I have to wear additional like hats, like take sales calls or do accounting. Then I'm like, oh, this is draining, man. But the content is just what I keep coming back to, because it's my passion.
Zone of genius, I suppose.
Yes, I guess. Honestly, I have found that ikigai, I feel, in my life for sure.
Powerful, man. My closing question to you is, what's next for you, and where can people find Charlie?
Sure. Well, yeah, you can find Charlie across any social media platform. What's next for me is ultimately, I'm good at creating content, and I've built a name for myself being like an AI content guy. But honestly, I just want to keep growing my businesses, and this is exactly why I'm launching Charlie 2.0, the digital brain, because I don't want to just be a person who's a creator. I want to be known as someone who's can grow businesses, who's really effective at doing this stuff. So ultimately, this is exactly what Charlie Second Brain is going to do. It's effectively going to help so many people, but then also be a highly successful business model that I can honestly look back at in 10 years' time and be like, whoa, that was impressive. So yeah, that's my latest obsession. And yeah, you can find me on any social media platform, but Substack is the place where I share my best stuff if you really want to go deeper.
That's cool. Charlie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah, really appreciate it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.